I will begin by giving a brief definition of the term contentment. What it means in its original Sanskrit equivalent. But in Sanskrit, the word used is santosha. Santosha literally means a state of mind where you don't really seek for anything higher. You reach a level of, I don't want to use the word satisfaction because that is too gross, too inadequate a word to express the real implication of the word contentment. Well, when you reach a state of inner fulfillment, inner completeness, inner perfection, where you do not feel a need for striving for anything else. Now, if you buy a car that you want, that you like, you may feel a kind of inner satisfaction, but not contentment. Not what contentment means in its original Sanskrit equivalent, means santosha. Because the reason is that car may break down, maybe after a few years it could be stolen. And then this satisfaction or happiness that you enjoy when you buy the car is lost. It becomes unhappiness. So it's just like two sides of the same coin. On one side you have happiness when you get something that you want, you like. But that happiness is an integral part of its opposite, unhappiness. So you can't have a coin with only one side. If you want a coin, it should have two sides. Now, can you think of a coin with only one side? Well, logically you can't think of it. But if you can think of it, that is contentment. So that's a real meaning of the word contentment. So it's a kind of inner spiritual feeling of fulfillment that goes beyond satisfaction. That's why Lord Krishna gives a very wonderful, philosophically and psychologically very rational interpretation of the word contentment. Sukham atyantigam yattat buddhigrahim atindriya. So the word used is sukham, which literally, if you go to Moni Williams or Apte, you find happiness, joy. But it is qualified by an adjective. Atyantika means the absolute, the complete. A kind of happiness which doesn't have its opposites. As I said earlier, in the empirical world, in the world of the senses, happiness is not really happiness. It is only the absence of unhappiness. So you are unhappy because you couldn't buy a BMW, you had only a Toyota or anything, suppose. Now you get a BMW, then the unhappiness associated with not having a BMW vanishes. So the joy associated with a new expensive car is only an absence of the unhappiness of not having it. So real happiness is impossible to achieve at the sensory level. That's what it really means. Because happiness at the empirical level is not happiness, it is only the absence of unhappiness. Now, so Lord Krishna says Atyantika means absolute. It doesn't have its opposite. It is like a coin with only one side. And then he says Buddhigrahim atindriya. There is a reason why I quote this verse, because contentment is a spiritual state of human mind. It is not related to this world of empirical experiences. So Lord Krishna uses Atyantika means absolute, infinite. And he says it is beyond the experience, beyond cognition of the five senses or human intelligence. You cannot intellectually, mentally experience or analyze it. So, Sukham Atyandikam Yattat Buddhigrahim Atindriyam. That's what Lord Krishna says. This is supposed to be the most perfect and complete definition of what Santosha or contentment literally means in actual experience. There is another term used which comes very close to this but not exactly equal to this. That is Patanjali Yoga system, where this contentment is listed as one of the secondary disciplines. Niyama it is called. Shaucha, Santosha, Tapas, Swadhyaya, Isar Pranidhana. So Santosha is a kind of natural discipline that every person should cultivate along with other 9 disciplines, yamas and niyamas. Now, this is the real meaning of contentment. Now, I can give the picture of a person who has this contentment and a person who doesn't have it. You may be driving in the freeway now, and you are caught in a traffic jam, and you are informed by the traffic police that you won't be able to move forward for the next 2 hours. You are sure about it. Now, you know it very well, and you can easily sit on a good seat. Still, you will be sitting in the car feeling anxious. Your BP goes up. If you are a diabetic patient, it gets aggravated, and you know what a terrible state of affairs, and then you're complaining, cursing the traffic system, the police department, the highway system, everything. But this expression of unhappiness doesn't improve the state of affairs. Anyway, you can't move after maybe within 2 hours. Now the point is, a man or a woman or a person who has reached a level of contentment can sit quiet without being disturbed, knowing fully well that you can't do anything about it. So one can sit quiet, doing nothing, and get anxious, fatigued, tired. It really happens in our life. So a state of contentment is a state of inner fulfillment where you are able to remain in a state of complete tranquility, peace and happiness. Now, to drive home this idea, I can quote another very interesting statement. It comes in one of our important devotion classics, Bhagavata Purana. Nityotsavam bhavatyesham nityasri nityamangala. This is the statement. It's a very profound statement. What is the mental state of an individual who has got contentment? For him, every moment, every day is a day of celebration. That is what literally means. Every day is a celebration. Every day is a holiday. It doesn't mean that you don't work. But you, even while working very hard for long hours in the office, you can feel the joy of holiday. Because you are always in a state of inner fulfillment, inner happiness, which is infinite, which is not just the absence of unhappiness. This is what contentment literally means. So it is not a psychological, it is not a sensory state of experience, it is a kind of inner experience. Now, as I said, it is a spiritual state of human mind. That's why in the 12th chapter of the Gita, Lord Krishna describes the characteristics of an ideal devotee. You may ask the question, why all this bundle of the old ancient Sanskrit verses? There is a reason for it. Contentment, as I said, is possible only for a true spiritual seeker. It's not possible for anybody. If you are an executive, if your performance is not very good, you may attend a kind of session where you pay $100 per hour and you are asked to shout, "When I shall succeed, 10,000. We come home and again the mind goes back to the previous state. So any kind of psychological counseling, any kind of auto-suggestion, all days will not give you contentment, because it is a spiritual state of human mind. It is not a psychological, it is not an emotional state of human mind. So Lord Krishna says the first sign that we are spiritual seekers, a person has a spiritual interest, a spiritual aspiration is santushta sadadam yogi yatatma dridhanishchaya. Means a person who has got contentment within, who has got inner contentment, alone can be a devotee of God. Because being a spiritual aspirant, a seeker itself gives you a kind of inner fulfillment, inner joy. If you read, some of you may have read Saint Teresa of Avila's autobiographical writings. I am giving example from a different cultural source. Saint Teresa of Avila was a great woman saint. Her autobiographical writings are very famous, very well known. If you write it, you find, oh no, the devil is tempting me, so I should be careful. So you find such writings. Now she, or any spiritual seeker in any spiritual tradition, or if you read the Way of the Pilgrim, it's a well-known Russian mystical work belonging to mid-19th century. The Way of the Pilgrim and the Pilgrim continues his journey. Two examples. Now you find these great spiritual seekers, they have to face a lot of obstacles, problems, crises in their life. Now, how are they able to face these problems? Lord Krishna says a true spiritual seeker should be a person of strong determination, iron will. So santushta sadadam yogi yatatma dridhanishya. Dridhanishya means person has a strong determination, an iron will. A weak person cannot be a spiritual seeker, and a weak person mentally weak person can never have contentment. So these great spiritual seekers are able to go ahead in their spiritual life. They are able to face problems and obstacles and critical situations, what you call dark night of the soul, a state of mind where you feel you reach a dead end in your spiritual journey. They are able to confront all these problems because they have a fuel that enables them to move forward. That is this contentment. Well, I am a spiritual seeker, I am on the right track. So this feeling gives them a tremendous contentment. Contentment helps you to conserve your mental, psychological energy. That is one important, very practical benefit of being contented. If you are not contented, if you are unhappy, then a lot of emotional, psychological energy will be dissipated, will be destroyed due to dissipation or distraction. You won't be able to focus your full mind or your full energy on what we are doing, because you'll be anxious. Anxiety is rooted in discontentment. So anxiety can be solved only at a spiritual level. So contentment helps us to conserve our energy, preserve our energy, save our energy, mental energy, and also power of concentration. And this helps us to divert our mental energy and power of concentration into spiritual channel, into whatever we are doing actually. A calm and contented, peaceful person who who is peaceful within himself and also peaceful with the rest of the world, can divert all his energy and time towards a creative diversion, to creative direction. Whatever he is doing or she is doing, he can spend full time energy and focus on what he is doing at present. So he will be able to live at the present. Otherwise, our anxiety and discontentment will be dissipated, either worrying about the problems from the past and problems from the future. Now, as I said earlier, I quoted one verse, Nityotsavam Bhavatyesha. You will be able to live in a kind of eternal present, in a state of perpetual celebration. That's what it did to Utsava means celebration. You have this Easter big celebration. Like that. A holiday mood. See, if one can have a holiday mood throughout our life, it doesn't mean not doing work or not going to the office. Even in the midst of being engaged in our day-to-day activities and responsibilities, still if one can can live in a holiday mood, it is what is meant by living in eternal present. Now what really happens, so I shall try to explain this background, this mysterious experience from different angles. So one point you have to remember is, in spiritual life, there is neither past nor future. This may appear to be a bit of a paradox, contradiction in terms. Actually, we can never experience the past. We never experienced the past. Because the past we experienced only in the form of the present. When we really experience the past, it is only as the present. And when we are going to experience the future, it is only in the form of the present. So, the line of demarcation between the past and the present and the future is like a line that you draw on water surface. It is non-existent. It is purely a matter of imagination. Why? Because future is not going to be experienced as future. We are going to experience the future only in the form of the present, and the past we experienced only in the form of the present. So past and future are non-existent, and they are just matters of imagination. To understand this, we must keep in mind a picture of our mental world. Patanjali's system of yoga gives a very interesting and very rational interpretation of human mind in its various functions. So it divides the states of human mind based on the emotional health condition into 5 categories. It's called Kshipta, Mudha, Vikshipta, Aikagra and Niruddha. These are the 5 Sanskrit terms. If I don't find in Patanjali Yoga Sutras only 195 sutras, you find the commentaries. Vyasa and Vijnana Bhikshu, Ramananda Saraswati and others. So, the first state of human mind is called Kshipta, means a state of complete restlessness. Maybe in manic conditions, this is associated with manic conditions. You become emotionally, psychologically restless. The second state is a state of stupefaction, where you are not able to understand anything. It's a state of morons or idiots, the terms used in psychological. The third state is what we are going to discuss. In fact, that is relevant from the standpoint of the spiritual sadhana, spiritual life. That's called Vikshipta. which means always in a flux, like the pendulum of a clock, which moves from one extreme to the other extreme, one side to the other side. You can find this in our life. Suppose you go to a library, we read a wonderful book, or you go to a church or a temple for prayer and meditation, or you go and attend some wonderful, useful, spiritually very useful programs. So we are interested when we are attending the lectures, when we engage in the prayer in the church or a temple, or when you are reading a holy book, the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible, we feel elated, a kind of contentment. But after some time, when we go out to our office or workplace, then mind moves in the opposite direction. So mind doesn't remain in a state of steadiness. This has got one serious problem. You may have noticed it. Suppose we take a decision to meditate, pray. We use our strong determination. Well, I will read this book, I will attend this prayer. After that, you feel a strong inclination to go and read some newspapers, San Francisco Chronicle or New York Times, and read not the important, some political, social, which may not be very relevant for our life, spiritual life. So you find the mind has a tendency from at one level to go in search of higher ideas, spiritual ideas, because we have a natural interest in spiritual life. Otherwise, you won't go for it. But then we don't have the steadiness necessary to remain in that state of higher spiritual contentment. So the mind gets tired of doing good things. There is in criminology, there is a problem. Some criminals, they cannot keep themselves in a state of mental steadiness unless they commit some crimes. So there is a particular kind of criminal state of mind. Unless they do some mischief, they won't feel contentment. Not contentment, joy, the sense of meaningfulness of life. So sometimes, in fact, this is characteristic of Vikshipta state. In a very graphic style, the commentators on Patanjali Yoga Sutras give a very wonderful picture of the mental world in a very rational way. So, we have interest in spiritual life, but that interest is not steady. So it is called Vikshipta, which means it's just like the waves in the mental ocean. Because the pendulum has to swing in one direction, then it has to swing the opposite direction. It cannot remain steady in the middle. This is characteristic of most of the spiritual seekers. At one stage in our life, we reach a dead end. This is also natural. After practicing for long years meditation, reading of scriptures and so on, many spiritual seekers feel, well, what next? Technically, this is called the dark night of the soul in the Christian Catholic mystical tradition, where of course they give anthropomorphist interpretation to this problem, bringing the devil and the Beelzebub into the picture, Satan into the picture. But Patanjali Yoga system gives a more psychologically rational interpretation. It says it's the natural characteristic of the human mind, which is trying to achieve spiritual contentment, to feel that it has reached a dead end, it has reached a wall that it cannot penetrate, that it cannot get over. So at that time, for some time we were lost, but again we may search for spiritual life. This is the Vikshipta state. The fourth state is Ekagra, concentration, and the fifth state is Niruddha, the highest yoga, Chitta Vritti Nirodha. fifth state. Now, from practical point of view, I want to come back to this state of vikshipta state, the third state of the human mind. In fact, Arjuna puts one question to Krishna in the Gita, in the 6th chapter. And there is a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna on this subject. How to achieve contentment, how to remain mentally in a state of perpetual contentment, and how to face the problem of being in a flux always, like a vikshipta state, mind swings from one extreme point to the other extreme point. So the question is like, Ayadi Siddhayo Pedu Yoga Chalida Manasaha Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gadim Krishna Gichani. This is the simple question which naturally comes to any spiritual seeker. The question is this: what about ordinary spiritual seekers who are in a quest for spiritual contentment? We prayed for many years, we meditated for many years, we read holy scriptures, we discussed spiritual matters, and we practiced a lot of discipline, concentration, meditation. But then we don't feel that we are making much progress. So we reach a state of kind of discontentment. Or sometimes, people may not, may be faced with an accident, deviation, a fall or death. All these things could happen. All these are included in this question. So the disciple, the Gita, Arjuna puts this question. What will be the destiny, what will happen to a person who is in search of higher spiritual meaning if he doesn't fully succeed? In answer to this, Krishna expounds a grand philosophy of life. The first thing that he says is this: Partha naiveha namutra vinasastasya vidyade nahi kalyanakut kaschim durgadim tada gacchati. This is the verse. I should give an expanded meaning. Look here. If you practice meditation only for half an hour in your life, and if you have lived only for 100 years, if you meditate only once, half an hour. Or if you have meditated for 99 years, then you had a deviation. Supposing you have lived for 100 years. Whatever little, however much you have done for your spiritual welfare in this life will never be lost. This is a very psychologically very important answer that Lord Krishna gives. It's not necessarily spiritual practice, but at a subjective level. You have helped a person to cross the streets, maybe a blind person. Or there is an earthquake or a tsunami in Philippines, you have paid $1,000 donation you have sent. Or if you could not do anything, you feel at your heart, well, what a tragedy, I couldn't help them. So even an ordinary flash thought, an emotion, or a deed, or a word, whatever little good things we have done in this life will create a spiritual bank balance, will not be lost, and when you are born again, this bank balance will help you to continue your spiritual journey forward. This is the answer that is given. Now, this is related to two important cardinal principles of Vedanta and Yoga. One is law of karma, and the other one is the doctrine of rebirth, doctrine of reincarnation. Life is not just one chance. Our life doesn't begin with birth and then long life, and it doesn't end with a piece of stone in the cemetery when the body is pushed through the tube in the crematorium. That's not the end of the journey. the journey continues. So, whatever little spiritual practice we live in this world, we do in this world, either for our own spiritual progress, maybe meditation, japa, reading holy scriptures, or philanthropic activities, or something that we try to do for others in terms of action, thought, word, deed, whatever may be. This will create a spiritual bank balance. So when you are born again, you can draw your check and draw money from the spiritual bank. That's what Lord Krishna actually says. Tatratam buddhi samyogam labhade paurudehikam yadadecha tato bhuya samsiddhu kurudantara. This particular, this context, the discussion of this subject ends with this verse. So Lord Krishna says, we know why, there is a reason why I am explaining. The clue to developing contentment. In the midst of all the realities and problems you are facing in this 21st century, living in a very competitive world where you have to exert yourself to the extreme mentally, intellectually, physically, even to keep your life afloat, not only to succeed, to keep the status quo. When you work, when you live in a highly competitive society, it's very difficult to even intellectually conceive of this idea of spiritual contentment. In fact, this verse gives the clue to that. That's why I'm quoting this particular portion from the 6th chapter of the Gita. So Lord Krishna says, as I said, so you remember, you should keep in mind what I said earlier. Whatever little spiritual practice we do, or philanthropic activity, or act of kindness, broad-mindedness, nobility, not necessarily action or a word, even thought, will create a vritti, a vasana, a samskara, nishchaya, and a tendency to continue these actions. You get a spiritual bank balance. And when you are born again, we will naturally connect with this earlier characteristics, this spiritual bank balance. So that's why when you are walking through the street, when we find there's a big letter, big board, meditation center, feel like entering the place and sitting there for some time. Now you're able to confront this onslaught of Vedanta and not run away from here. Because you have inherited, accumulated, brought back from your previous life this baggage of spiritual treasure, which helps you to imbibe, to connect yourself again to this spiritual culture. That's been Tattradam Buddhism Yoga. Buddhism Yoga means, your intellect, your mind is full of these samskaras, these impressions you gathered in previous life. So it connects again. So when there is an opportunity, when you go to a library, you may read a book, you are connecting again to the past samskaras, spiritual samskaras. When you talk to people, when you discuss, again you are connecting again. Sometimes the connection may be lost. It doesn't remain steady. That's the problem. Of course, as I said, vikshipta, mind moving like a pendulum in both directions. So our purpose should be to keep ourselves connected, permanently connected, linked to this higher spiritual idea. And then we will be able to enjoy contentment. So that is the real psychological implication of contentment. That means one can never be unhappy if you feel that whatever you have done, that remains there. Nothing is lost and you are never late. Even when you are 100 years old, you have only not many years to live, you can start. So this Vedanta psychology tells you that we can open a new chapter in our life, turn a new leaf in the book of our life, any day, any moment. That's what Lord Krishna says. So, this idea of doctrine of law of karma and the doctrine of continued existence. I mean the idea that life doesn't end with death. Death is only a colon or a semicolon. Sorry, it is a colon, semicolon, or maybe a comma, but not a full stop. That's what Vedanta tells you. This is one psychological clue to developing contentment. So that's very important principle, because it is something that you don't find in modern Christianity, in any of the Abrahamic religions do, according to many theologians, even the early church fathers, the desert fathers, and even a small tiny sect of Christians who may have come to India in the 2nd century, they still retain this doctrine of rebirth, law of karma and rebirth, which the early church fathers, the desert fathers had. But later on, historically speaking, in the 5th century, St. Augustine practically removed it from the Christian theological tradition. And also in 325 AD, there was the Council of Nicaea, where the doctrine of law, karma and rebirth were put to vote, and it was lost by one vote. And that's the division of the Eastern Roman Church and Western Roman Church. That's the important event in the history of Catholic religion, that the Council of Nicaea, which took place in 325 AD. Of course, these are historical things I'm not going to deal with right now. Unless you are interested, you can ask the question later. So the point is this: the idea that life is a continuous cycle, that death is not the end of the journey, that whatever little we do will produce is good, useful product, result, which we can enjoy, which will help us to continue our spiritual journey in next life. This can give us contentment. Because very often, many of the problems, the depression or dissatisfaction, the feeling the dark night of the soul, or the life coming to a dead end, where we are lost, all these feelings are rooted in one central doctrine, that life is only one chance. At the end of this life, everything is lost. Either you are welcomed to heaven or condemned to hell. That is not the idea of Vedanta and Yoga. That's an important point to keep in mind. So that's one important principle you have to keep in mind. Second important principle in developing contentment is this, and that is very crucial in modern times. Our dissatisfaction, depression, or absence of contentment is rooted in our obsession with pragmatism. People want to judge everything in terms of its tangible, immediately available, practical results. That's an important problem, which stands in the way of cultivating higher contentment. In fact, it is rooted in the old European philosophical school of utilitarianism, which is associated with John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham, who defined the validity of any action in terms of maximum amount of pleasure that brings to maximum number of people. It's the philosophy, the doctrine of utilitarianism. So in modern times, we are all living under the tyranny of pragmatism or utilitarianism. We want immediate result, and we want the results that could be judged in terms of dollars, in terms of physical comforts. Whatever we do, we want to judge our actions in terms of the immediate practical results that our action produces. So this is one important cause of anxiety and worry. This is the deadliest enemy of contentment. We can easily see whatever we learn, Is that going to help me to get a better job? Is that going to help me to earn a few more extra dollars? Or is that going to help me to get a higher job? So whatever we learn, do, should have a link to some practical results. And that practical results in the form of physical comforts, or to be very frank, the tyranny of dollar. It could be in other countries tyranny of pound, tyranny of rupees, tyranny of yen, whatever may be. I mean, somehow we want to link whatever we do with its immediate results. If we cannot break the link between what we do and its immediate results, benefits, then we can never have contentment. If we cannot do anything for its own sake, if we cannot do anything without thinking about the practical benefits of our actions, we cannot have contentment. The first step, therefore, to achieve, to cultivate contentment, inner contentment, is we must liberate ourselves from the tyranny of pragmatism, of practicality. It doesn't mean that we should take refuge in idealism. Idealism will drive you towards a kind of utopian, imaginary, idealistic world. That's not the purpose. But pragmatism is cutthroat pragmatism, cutthroat practicality ideal will keep us hooked into the world of the senses. It will keep us permanently hooked into today and now, the world of comforts. So the first step towards higher contentment is to liberate ourselves from this tyranny of practicality. I mean, the best way to avoid unhappiness is to stop looking for happiness everywhere. Because we can never have happiness 24 hours of the day, 7 days of the week, 365 days of the year. And that's everyone knows. It doesn't require an Einstein or a Shankaracharya, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa to tell us that there will be unhappiness always. But what happens, in actual practical life, we always look for happiness all the time, every day, every moment. Any well-educated person will be able to intellectually understand the fact that this life is not made of roses. It's not always meant to be comfortable. But that is only as a doctrine. In actual life, we think that we should have comforts, happiness and joy 24 hours of the day, 7 days of the week, 365 days of the year. So long as we are looking for happiness all the time, we are content to live in a world of discontentment. Therefore, the best way to avoid the problem of unhappiness is to recognize the fact that happiness and unhappiness are two sides of the same coin, and the only way to go beyond both is to transcend them both. I mean, to stop looking for happiness, and then you won't be shocked when you have to face unhappiness. That's the real meaning of Lord Krishna's Atyandika means a transcendental happiness. If happiness can be transcendental, it is called contentment. Transcendental means it's like a coin only one side. So, the real contentment stands by itself. The joy, the happiness associated with inner contentment is not just the absence of unhappiness. It is the constant presence of happiness minus its opposite. As I said, it's like a coin with only one side. So, I have just touch this subject today. We'll discuss tomorrow, continue the discussion tomorrow. So you can have interaction now. We have more than half an hour. And if you have no question to ask, I shall continue. Yes. Right.
Maharaj, you were just mentioning about step one as stopping to look or look at happiness in every object, every moment, and so on. But in the garb of such a process, there is a good chance that one might cultivate apathy towards everything.
Yes.
And how would one reconcile with such?
Well, one should not become negligent or indifferent towards duties and responsibilities or everyday realities of life. Even in the midst of doing your duties, performing your responsibilities, facing the realities of life, one should, within the mind, one should develop a mechanism within that guides you through all these difficulties. Well, I'm doing my best. You had a wonderful job. If it is still within your mind, you should remember it is not going to last for long. In the sense, it is something related to this world. It may last only so long, maybe for 100 years, we are going to live for 100 years. That's all. So that point should be kept in mind. So the idea of the impermanence of all these things, success, and also failure. Frequently we believe, oh, this problem is going to be there all the time. In fact, very often we feel lost. People feel a kind of inner discontentment or unhappiness because they forget the fact that failure also is impermanent as success is impermanent. So that's one important thing. There is always a conflict between our mind and intellect. When you may be teaching psychology, you may be a specialist in behavioral science, but still you may be an eccentric in human behavior. It could happen. So the theories we know, what we teach, what we write about, we know at an intellectual level. But mind is at a different level. There is always this perpetual conflict between mind and intellect. And we all live at the mental level. We all live at the level of attitudes, emotions, feelings, not at the thought level. Go to a library, read a book, you are impressed. But come back to your home, you are in a different level. That's the level of mind, emotions, feelings, etc. And so long as there is a gap between these two, this problem is there. So very often what we intellectually understand, we are not able to remember when we live at the emotional level. So intellectually we should be able to understand that failure also is impermanent, not less than success. That's why Sri Ramakrishna puts in a very simple language. This higher wisdom you tie in your dhoti, if you are wearing not dhoti but pants, so put in your pocket and live in the world. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says. You cannot display in your hands. You work with both hands. But whenever we face an inner problem, then we can refer to this higher idea. So the gap between intellect and mind should be narrowed. And that's possible by constantly associating with these ideas. If you can't associate with people who live these ideas, at least you can read their books, ideas, thoughts, but somehow we must keep ourselves linked to this higher idea, even in the midst of doing our duties and responsibilities with great efficiency, concentration and focus. We should not be negligent or indifferent. Even in the midst of living in a very competitive society, with all enthusiasm and efficiency, we must keep in mind the fact, which we all know intellectually, but we forget by living in this world. We should stop forgetting this fact, that these things are not going to be permanent. But very often, we may be happy to remember the impermanence of the failure, but we may not always remember the impermanence of success. So we look for success all the time, which really doesn't happen, impossible. No one can always succeed. The person who looks for success everywhere, in everything, is condemned to live in a world of dissatisfaction. Because success everywhere, all the time, is a very utopian idea. So we must remember the impermanence of failure and also success. That gives you a tremendous mental strength, because very often worries and concerns and problems and anxieties take away a lot of mental health. We get fatigued. As I said, you may be sitting in a car, not working hard, but you will curse the traffic system, the freeway system, the highway system. Oh, I'm going to be late today. But that doesn't help you to push forward. Observing your anxieties and problems, the driver in front of you is not going to move away. But then, knowing this fully well, we become anxious, we become tired, exhausted and fatigued. Any intelligent person can understand this, but in actual life, we forget. That's again, the gap between where intellect stands, where mind remains. That's the main problem. Often this conflict. In fact, in 21st century, most people know many of these things. That makes it all the more difficult to solve the problem. Most of us know intellectually. We all know intellectually. But we are not able to remember this. We are not able to practice the wisdom of this knowledge in actual life. The reason is mind is at a much lower level. If we could always remember what we know and practice what we know, then there will be no problem in this world. So the natural tendency of the human mind to come down to the level of emotions and feelings, and to move away from the level of what we know and come down to the level of what we are forced to do. So there's a gap between what we want to do and what we end up doing, That's it.
So Maharaj, that's a very profound thought what you said. Would take a time to absorb what you just said. The one question I have is that, let's say, individual level, I become successful, I have resources to make myself comfortable, family comfortable and all that. But all well I know how many peoples are left behind, how many suffering are there, how many places are, things like that. And it's just not about that stays as a constant guilty sometimes for me, that why I cannot do more or anything like that. Even let's say I become whatever resource I donate, but that still doesn't solve. How can one do not avoid that guilty, or what